5 people went to Wrangel Island. Why did only 1 return? In September 1921, 5 people travelled to a remote island north of Siberia. 4 had been recruited to establish an Arctic settlement. The 5th had been hired to repair their clothes. They expected a ship to return the following summer. It never arrived. What happened next would leave an expedition missing, a camp dangerously short of food, and one final account of the events preserved in a diary. But the important question is this: why did the person who appeared least prepared become the only one who returned? Her name was Ada Blackjack. She was a 23-year-old Iñupiaq woman from Alaska. Ada was not an expedition leader. She was not a scientist or navigator. She had not been hired to hunt. She had been hired as a seamstress. Her job was to make and repair the fur clothing the expedition would need in the Arctic cold. Ada had originally been told that other Iñupiaq people would be joining the expedition. They withdrew before it departed. That left Ada as the only Alaska Native member and the only woman traveling with 4 unfamiliar men. She was also leaving someone behind in Alaska, someone whose future depended upon the money Ada had been promised. His name was Bennett. And to understand why Ada accepted such a dangerous job, we need to understand what had already happened to her son. Ada Blackjack was born in Alaska in 1898. When she was 8, her mother sent her to a Methodist mission school in Nome. There, Ada learned to read, write, and sew. At 16, she married Jack Blackjack. They had 3 children, but only Bennett survived infancy. Ada's husband later abandoned them. Bennett was also seriously ill with tuberculosis. Ada walked approximately 40 miles to Nome, carrying her sick child for much of the journey. But reaching Nome did not solve their problem. Ada did not have enough money to provide the treatment Bennett needed. She was eventually forced to place him temporarily in a children's home where he could receive care. Ada found work cleaning and sewing, but she still could not earn enough to bring him home. Then she was offered $50 a month to join an expedition to Wrangel Island. The salary offered Ada the possibility of reuniting with Bennett and paying for his medical treatment. She accepted. The expedition included Alan Crawford, Milton Garley, Fred Maurer, and Lorne Knight. And they were also accompanied by a cat named Vic. The mission had been conceived by an explorer, Wrangel Stephenson. He believed that establishing a settlement on Wrangel Island could support a territorial claim over it, but Stephenson would not be joining them. The 5 expedition members would be left to establish the camp without him. They carried limited supplies because the plan relied partly upon hunting. More importantly, it depended upon a ship reaching them the following summer. The ship would bring fresh provisions and maintain their connection to the outside world. Without it, the expedition would be left facing another Arctic winter it had not been properly supplied to endure. Everything depended upon that ship. But first, Ada had to survive the group itself. Ada's position within the expedition was vulnerable from the very beginning. She was isolated among 4 unfamiliar men and held little authority within the camp. The surviving records also reveal that she was sometimes treated cruelly. Lorne Knight documented one disturbing incident in his diary. After Ada refused to repair a pair of boots, Knight tied her to a flagpole until she agreed to complete her work. It is an uncomfortable part of the story, but it cannot be ignored. Ada was not treated as an equal member of the expedition. Nevertheless, she continued working. She repaired clothing and helped maintain the camp as the Arctic winter surrounded them. Eventually, the seasons began changing. The group started watching for the relief ship, but the waters around Wrangel Island remained blocked by heavy sea ice. The ship could not reach them. The expedition members waited. The days continued passing. Summer began disappearing. Still, no vessel appeared. Then the sea started freezing around the island again. The group was now trapped for a second winter. Their food supplies were shrinking. Their ammunition was running low. The island was not providing as much game as the organizers had expected. Something else was also happening inside the camp. Lorne Knight was becoming ill. He had developed scurvy caused by severe deficiency of vitamin C. His condition continued deteriorating. The group needed outside help, but waiting for another ship could mean waiting until the following summer. They identified one other possible route to safety. It required members of the expedition to leave the island on foot. In January 1923, Crawford, Mora, and Garley prepared the remaining sled dogs. They intended to cross the frozen sea towards Siberia and find help. Knight was too ill to travel. Ada would remain behind to care for him. The three men left the camp and disappeared across the ice. If they reached Siberia, they could alert the outside world and send help back to Wrangel Island. Ada and Knight waited. Days became weeks. No message came. The three men did not return. There was no way for Ada to know whether they had reached land or whether they were still somewhere on the ice. All she knew was that Knight was becoming weaker. There was nobody else at the camp who could find food for them. Ada's surviving diary records what happened during the months that followed. It does not describe an effortless transformation into an Arctic explorer. It documents work, daily, physical, and unavoidable work. Ada cooked and cleaned. She gathered wood and maintained equipment. She repaired clothing and kept the camp functioning. She also became Knight's only carer. Ada cleaned his bed sores. She read to him. She prepared his meals and gave him much of the food she obtained. But caring for Knight would mean nothing if Ada could not keep finding that food. There was no experienced hunter left at the camp. Ada had to learn. She began checking traps, collecting eggs and hunting birds. She trapped foxes and taught herself how to operate the expedition's firearms. On the 21st of May 1923, Ada recorded one of her first attempts with a shotgun. She placed an empty tea tin in front of her and fired. She hit it. In ordinary circumstances, hitting a tea tin would mean very little. On Wrangel Island, it meant Ada was becoming capable of finding food and protecting herself. One skill led to another. She learned to clean and maintain the weapons. She reinforced a storage tent using driftwood. She built a sleeping platform. She made a stove from empty kerosene containers. She also created an observation point from which she could watch for polar bears. None of these actions solved the entire crisis. Each one solved the next immediate problem. But Ada's own health was beginning to deteriorate. Her diary records symptoms associated with scurvy. She was becoming ill while caring for someone who could no longer care for himself. She also continued writing about Bennett. In an entry dated the 1st of April 1923, Ada left instructions about what should happen if she died. She asked for her belongings to be taken to her son. Bennett had been the reason she accepted the expedition. Now returning to him depended upon Ada remaining alive long enough for someone to reach the island. But the relief ship had already failed once. The three men who had gone looking for help had vanished, and Knight's condition had reached its final stage. On the 23rd of June 1923, Lord Knight died. Ada typed a short record of the date so that whoever eventually reached the island would know what had happened. She could not move his body from the sleeping bag. Instead, she built a barrier around it using wooden boxes to protect it from animals. Then she moved into the storage tent with Vic. The expedition had arrived with 5 people. Now Ada was the only person left at the camp. But she did not know what had happened to Crawford, Mora, or Garley. She could not know whether they had reached Siberia. She could not know whether they had found help. She only knew they had not returned. There was nobody left to check the traps if Ada became too weak. Nobody to repair the shelter if it was damaged. Nobody to gather fuel or prepare food. Nobody to watch for danger while she rested. And nobody who could tell her whether another ship was coming. Ada continued working. She hunted. She checked the traps. She gathered wood. She maintained the shelter and watched for polar bears. She continued because every completed task gave her another chance of being alive if rescue ever arrived. Popular versions of Ada's story sometimes claim that she survived completely alone for 2 years. That is not accurate. She spent almost 2 years on Wrangel Island in total. She became its only surviving person after Knight's death and remained alone for approximately 8 weeks. Those final weeks came after months of diminishing supplies, illness, and caring for a dying man. There was still no sign of Crawford, Mora, or Garley. There was still no proof that anyone outside the island knew Ada was alive. Then, on the morning of 20th of August 1923, she heard something outside her tent. Ada went to investigate. Through the fog, she saw the shape of a ship approaching Wrangel Island. The vessel was the Donaldson. It carried a rescue party led by Harold Noyce, an associate of Mr. Stephenson. After the previous relief attempt had failed, another ship had finally managed to reach the island. Ada initially expected to see Crawford, Mora and Garley among the people arriving. They were not aboard. No trace of the three men had been found. They had never returned from their journey across the frozen sea. The rescuers had come looking for an expedition of 5 people. They found Ada Blackjack and Vic the cat. Nearly 2 years after arriving on Wrangel Island, Ada was taken aboard the ship. She was the expedition's sole human survivor. The woman who had been hired to repair clothing had learned to obtain food. The woman who had not been hired to maintain the camp had kept it functioning. The woman who had not been hired as a nurse had cared for Knight until his death. And the member who had begun with the least authority had become the final witness to what happened on Wrangel Island. News of Ada's survival spread rapidly. Newspapers turned her into a reluctant celebrity and compared her to Robinson Crusoe. But Ada had not gone to the Arctic seeking recognition. She had gone because Bennett was sick. The money from the expedition allowed her to reunite with her son and take him to Seattle for treatment. She had made it back to the person who had been waiting thousands of miles away. But surviving Wrangel Island did not create a perfect ending. Others profited from books and accounts of the expedition. Ada did not receive everything she had been promised. She continued to experience poverty and hardship during her life. Her survival did not remove every storm waiting for her at home, but it finally answered the question at the heart of the expedition. Why did the person who appeared least prepared become the only one who returned? Ada Blackjack did not survive because she arrived on Wrangel Island knowing how to overcome every challenge. She survived because she continued learning after the original plan had collapsed. When the relief ship failed, she kept working. When Knight became ill, she cared for him. When nobody else could obtain food, she learned to hunt. When the camp became her responsibility, she maintained it. And when she became the last person left, she continued completing the next necessary task. That was Ada's strength, not the absence of fear. Her own diary records fear and loneliness. Her strength was the ability to act while those emotions were present. She did not survive almost 2 years in one heroic moment. She survived individual days, one trap, one meal, one repair, one decision at a time. We often believe resilient people enter their storms already prepared. We wait to feel confident before taking the next step. We assume we need to know exactly how the journey will end before we begin moving. But Ada's story reveals something different. Sometimes strength does not appear before the storm. Sometimes the storm is where strength is built. Being unprepared at the beginning does not mean you are incapable of reaching the end. You can learn what the next moment requires. You can adapt when the original plan fails. You can discover abilities that your previous life never required you to use. 5 people traveled to Wrangel Island. Only Ada Blackjack returned. The expedition had selected her because of what she already knew how to do. Wrangel Island revealed everything else she was capable of becoming. If you enjoyed Ada Blackjack's story, there are countless other examples of ordinary people achieving extraordinary things when life pushed them to the limit. Visit unleashyourstorm.com and explore the Whirlwinds collection, where you'll find real, verified stories of courage, resilience, determination, and survival from around the world. Because sometimes the inspiration you need isn't found in a motivational quote. It's found in the true story of someone who refused to give up. And their story might just help you keep going through your own storm. Thank you for listening, and always unleash your storm.